My father's new wife wanted my inheritance. She never expected my mother's secret. Sign the papers, or you'll get nothing. That's what my stepmother said to me, standing in my mother's old kitchen, holding a folder full of documents she thought would make her rich. She had no idea that in 6 days, everything she had built, every lie, every scheme, was going to collapse. Because my mother, before she died, had left behind one secret. A secret my stepmother never saw coming. My name is Daniel Reyes, and this is the story of how my father's new wife tried to steal my inheritance and how my mother, from beyond the grave, made sure she failed. But to understand how we got to that kitchen, you need to go back 3 years. Back to the day my mother died. Growing up, my family wasn't rich, but we were steady. My father, Robert, ran a small hardware store in our town. My mother, Elaine, was a schoolteacher, patient, sharp, and quietly stubborn in a way that only revealed itself when it mattered most. I was their only child. We weren't a flashy family. No big house, no luxury cars. But my mother had one thing she was fiercely protective of, a piece of land her own grandfather had left her, just outside of town. It wasn't worth much on paper back then. She used to joke that one day, this piece of dirt is going to matter more than you think. I didn't understand what she meant. Not for years. My mother passed away when I was 26. Cancer. Fast and merciless, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. My father was destroyed. For almost a year, he barely spoke. I checked on him every week, brought him dinner, sat with him in silence, because there was nothing else to do. Then, about 14 months after my mother's funeral, he met Vanessa. She was warm at first. Attentive. She brought him soup when he was sick, laughed at his old jokes, made him feel young again. I wanted to be happy for him. Grief does strange things to people, and loneliness even stranger things. So when he told me he was going to remarry, I swallowed my hesitation and gave him my blessing. I told myself, he deserves happiness. Let it be. I had no idea what I was letting into our family. Slowly, she inserted herself into every decision. She sat in on meetings with my father's accountant. She started referring to the house as our house, to the store as our business. She began speaking for my father in conversations, finishing his sentences, answering questions before he could. I noticed it. My father didn't want to. The store's schedule changed. Vanessa's adult son from a previous relationship, Marcus, suddenly had a management title despite never having worked retail a day in his life. Old employees, people who'd been loyal to my father for 15 years, started quietly disappearing from the payroll. I raised concerns once, gently. My father brushed it off. She's just trying to help me organize things, Danny. Don't be so suspicious. But I was right to be suspicious. Because Vanessa wasn't organizing our family. She was mapping it, figuring out exactly where the money was and how to get her hands on it. It was at a family dinner, almost 2 years after the wedding, that Vanessa first brought up my mother's land. That property out past Miller Road, she said casually, cutting her chicken. It's just sitting there empty. Robert, we should really do something with it. Maybe sell it, invest the money into the store. I felt my stomach tighten. That land wasn't just dirt to me. It was the last physical thing that still belonged, unquestionably, to my mother's memory. She'd left it to me in her will, not to my father, not to anyone else. To me. That's not really something to discuss, I said carefully. It's already mine. Mom left it to me specifically. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, of course. I just meant as a family, we should think about the future. That was the moment the mask slipped, just slightly. And after that dinner, the pressure never really stopped. Over the following months, Vanessa's tactics grew sharper. She'd corner me one-on-one, saying things like, "Your father is getting older, Daniel. Don't you want him to feel secure? Don't you want to help this family?" When guilt didn't work, she tried sympathy. She told my father I was cold, that I didn't trust the family, that I was still stuck in the past over my mother. Worst of all, my father started to believe some of it. We had arguments we'd never had before. He accused me of being selfish. I accused him of losing sight of who he used to be. Vanessa always stood a few steps back during these fights, quiet, watching, never pushing too hard, just enough to keep the fire burning without her fingerprints on the match. I started to feel like a stranger in my own family. The breaking point came 6 weeks before that kitchen confrontation. My father called me to the house, and when I arrived, Vanessa was there with a manila folder and a lawyer I didn't recognize, not our old family attorney, Mr. Alden, but someone new, someone she had clearly hired herself. They laid out a proposal. I would sign over rights to my mother's land for the good of the family business in exchange for a small percentage of future profits from a redevelopment. Vanessa and Marcus had already started planning, permits pulled. Contractors contacted, all without my knowledge. I looked at my father. Did you know about this? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa thinks it could really help us, Danny. The store's struggling. This could save it. That's when Vanessa said the words that changed everything. Sign the papers, or you'll get nothing. We can make this difficult, Daniel, or we can make this easy. I stood up, folder untouched. I need time to think, I said. And I walked out. But I wasn't thinking about the land. I was thinking about something my mother had said to me, weeks before she died, that I hadn't understood. That night, I drove to Mr. Alden's office, the real family attorney, the one who had handled my mother's estate from the beginning, before Vanessa ever pushed him out of the picture. I told him everything. The pressure, the new lawyer, the redevelopment plans. Mr. Alden went quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope with my name on it. Your mother asked me to hold on to this, he said. She told me only to give it to you if someone ever tried to take that land from you. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a letter in my mother's handwriting, along with a second, older document, a codicil to her will, filed and legally binding, that I never knew existed. My mother's letter explained everything. She had suspected, even years before she died, that my father might remarry, and that whoever he married might one day try to take what was mine. So she hadn't just left me the land. She had placed it into an irrevocable trust, with airtight legal protections, and more than that, she had secretly acquired something else years earlier, a controlling minority stake in my father's hardware store, purchased quietly under her maiden name. Back when the business first struggled and she'd stepped in to save it financially without ever telling him she'd kept partial ownership. My mother wasn't just a schoolteacher. She was the reason the store had survived its worst years. And she had never let go of that stake. Which meant Vanessa's redevelopment plans for the store. They needed approval from a shareholder Vanessa didn't even know existed. Me. 2 days later, Vanessa's new lawyer filed paperwork to formally transfer the redevelopment permits and begin construction near my mother's land. That's when Mr. Alden and I struck back, not with anger, but with documentation. We filed an injunction. We revealed the trust. We revealed the ownership stake. Vanessa's lawyer, unaware of any of this, was blindsided in the meeting that followed. I watched her confidence crack in real time as Mr. Alden calmly laid out, page by page, exactly how much of her family business she never actually controlled. This is impossible, she said. Robert owns that store outright. He owns 70%, Mr. Alden replied. Elaine owned the other 30%. And upon her death, that 30% transferred directly to her son. Not her husband. Her son. In the following meeting, the one that took place in my mother's old kitchen, the one I opened this story with, Vanessa tried one last time to pressure me. That's when she said those words, sign the papers or you'll get nothing. I finally opened the folder I'd been holding the entire time and slid it across the table. Inside were copies of the trust documents, the shareholder records, my mother's letter. I already have everything, I told her. The land was never yours to negotiate. And neither is the store. My mother made sure of that a long time ago. My father read through the documents in silence, his hands trembling slightly as he turned the pages. When he got to my mother's letter, he had to stop and set it down for a moment. She had written, in part, if you're reading this, it means someone tried to take from our son what I worked to protect. Robert, I loved you, and I still do, wherever I am now. But I always knew love doesn't guarantee safety. So I made sure our family would be safe, no matter what came after me. My father wept at that table. Not out of embarrassment, not out of anger, but because, for the first time in 3 years, he truly understood how deeply my mother had loved us both, and how far she had gone to protect what we'd built long after she was gone. That night, after Vanessa and her lawyer left, my father sat me down. "I let this go too far," he admitted. "I was so afraid of being alone again that I stopped paying attention to who was really standing beside me." He told me he was filing for a legal separation from Vanessa. Not out of spite, but because the woman he thought he knew, warm, attentive, understanding, had never really existed. The version she showed him from the very beginning had been a performance, aimed at a future payout she never got to collect. In the months that followed, everything unraveled for Vanessa. Without access to the store's real ownership, the redevelopment deal collapsed, and the contractors she'd already paid deposits to began pursuing her personally for breach of contract. Marcus lost his so-called management position the moment my father reviewed the real payroll records. The divorce settlement, given the prenuptial agreement my father, thankfully, still had in place from before the wedding, left her with almost nothing beyond what she'd brought into the marriage. She left town quietly about 8 months later. I heard she tried the same approach with another older, recently widowed man 2 counties over. I don't know if it worked. I choose not to think about it. My father and I are closer now than we've been in years. He works fewer hours at the store, which I now co-run with him, exactly the way my mother quietly ensured it always could be run by family, protected by family, for family. Sometimes I drive out to that piece of land past Miller Road. I don't do anything with it. I just stand there. My mother used to say, "This piece of dirt is going to matter more than you think." She wasn't talking about the land's value. She was talking about what it represented, proof that, even after she was gone, her love for us would still be standing guard, quiet and patient, waiting for the moment we needed it most. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this: the people who truly love you don't need to fight for control. They build protection instead, quietly, patiently, without ever asking for credit. My mother never got to see how her secret saved us. But I like to believe, somehow, she already knew it would.